We're recording. Welcome, everyone, to the Do Epic Shit Today podcast. I am Hannah Mulhern, and I have a very special guest with me today, my husband.
I'm Ruben Mulhern. Episode 58. Did you look at what episode it was?
I did. Yeah.
58 in, and I made it on the board.
You did, baby.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. True. I don't even know. Honor, I guess. This is going to be an interesting episode because it's not a usual interview-ish session with a guest. I'm being interviewed by my husband to talk about a little bit about anxiety. Personally, I have had quite the struggle journey with anxiety, and I've recently just accomplished a very large milestone with anxiety, and I also have come to this point 8 years later, have reflected and wished someone had created a podcast or talked about this topic a bit more so that I didn't feel as siloed with the struggles of anxiety that I've kind of endured and had to figure out and eventually, got help and all of that. But that's going to be the topic of this episode. A little bit different, a bit more organic, extremely vulnerable. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is this podcast is about doing epic shit today. And if I can help one person, maybe I can help many, but if I can at least help one person by talking about anxiety and struggles and symptoms and my journey, then I feel like I've done my part. So,
and also I think that as a whole, your podcast is, I've listened to 57 of them by now, so I'm a bit of an expert on what your podcast is. And from my sense, you talk about things that are more personal, and you talk about, obviously, do epic shit today and a lot of positive, but I think that sprinkle in there, all of your guests and yourself are very honest about, well, yes, this was amazing, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. It was difficult because of X, Y, and Z. And so from what we talked about before we started recording, to me, part of why we're recording seems to me that, for anyone out there who doesn't talk about their anxiety, to hear that there might be someone like them out there and that they're not alone in the struggles that they may have. And although I think that what we're going to be talking about is an overall success for you, I think that just maybe someone hearing about your experience with anxiety, what some of the really tough days felt like, might just be a word for people to hear that they're not alone. So that's, to me, part of it, but it's not my podcast, it's your podcast. So yeah, I'm happy to help along and ask some questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, you started off with why we're recording, but I obviously know you quite well, and you've shared some with listeners over your episodes, but start with kind of what anxiety feels like to you, how long you've been experiencing it, what does anxiety mean to you, and what does that feel like, and when did it really start?
Yeah. So I will definitely answer all of those questions. And I just wanted to call it because I mentioned one of the reasons I'm recording this is also to, I suppose, celebrate. And with that celebration is also reflection of a huge milestone. I have been on anxiety medication for the last 8 years. The last, I want to say maybe six of those last 8 years, I was on the highest dosage possible. So I was taking sertraline, which is kind of a generic brand for Zoloft. It's known by many, and just also I want to slip this in, I do have it in our little show notes. I am not a professional. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. Neither is Ruben. While you are amazing, my love. You are not those things. And this is not some sort of diagnosis episode. This is purely me sharing my journey with you. So this is in no way a replacement or opinion even on what is best for you. as a listener, as a human. This is just me explaining why I was put on medication, my history as to why I was put on medication, and kind of the weaving of my diagnoses and my symptoms and all of that, just so that you, if there is someone out there who does have anxiety, perhaps there's something that you can relate to. So just wanted to start off before I jump in that this is not a replacement of professional, I don't even know, care, verbiage, professional insight. So I just want to call that out before I jump in.
We're just two people having a conversation about one of those people's anxiety.
That's right. That's right. So what I was saying prior, I'd been on medication, sertraline, last 8 years. Of the six of those last 8 were on the highest dosage, which is 200 milligrams, which is the max amount that you can take. So starting right there, I think my anxiety might be a bit more heavier than most, just because of the help from the medication that, while talking to my psychiatrist, was like, this, what you're explaining to me isn't quite normal. Like, perhaps we can up your dosage a little bit until we can sharpen the tools to get you to wean off of this. So remind me again of your question, my love.
I'm just curious. I think that the story kind of begins with the lead up to you starting with your medication and what that felt like for you.
Yeah. So the reason why I initially got on my medication, and I've been pretty transparent on past episodes, but for those who don't know, I played Division I basketball in college. Had great grades, I wouldn't say a star basketball player, but I was pretty well known in the program.
I think that she was a star basketball.
Thank you, baby. And with that came a lot of pressure, a lot of multitasking, a lot of busy schedules. At one point in my career, I was doing 1,000 shots every day. I, maintained a pretty decent 3.5 GPA, average in regards to schooling. I wanted to be, my schedule was stacked. And I also was struggling at that point at a young age because I was struggling with who I was as a person. I was trying to fit in, I was trying to change who I was to fit into the people that were around me, and I wasn't being authentic to myself. So that kind of foundational, who am I as a person, really kind of, the foundation of who you are wasn't very strong. So then when you add on schedule constraints, the pressure of performance, at my senior year, I was a co-captain with one of my best friends. So it was a lot on my plate. And it wasn't until I think my junior year that it was too much. It was too much to the point where I was debilitated. So like my freshman year, I've always had anxiety. I dealt with it by being around my friends and my family. And while I was in college, I did make friends and that sort, but not anyone that I could be open and honest with about my anxiety. And one of the reasons why I'm recording this today is people didn't talk about it. People didn't talk about the anxiety of performance. So you see like Simone Biles nowadays is very like, you see her meditating on the sidelines or the side before performing. Like it's more of a forefront topic. And when I was in college from 2013 to 2017, we didn't talk about anxiety. We didn't talk about the pressure performance. We didn't talk about like how to stay sane when your schedule is absolutely fucking nuts. That just wasn't a topic of something. So I was kind of just internally struggling, wondering like, why am I different? Why am I struggling with this? And so my freshman year, I was like the 6th man, or I was the 7th man, which means I basically would come in almost every game, and I had Tums. Like it had a point where I would make myself sick with like stress.
Because you were nervous about playing, or you were just...
I was so nervous about playing. I was nervous about performance. I was nervous about being in front of people. I'm sure there probably was like some confidence issues there as well. I was just anxiety ridden that what if I fucked up a play? What if I dropped a ball? What if I did this? Like there was this constant anxiety that made my stomach just churn. And so I had Tums underneath my chair on the bench for like the majority of freshman year. Sophomore rolled around, I played a 5. For those who don't know basketball terms, that's like the big post, the person who stands by the block, down in the key, which is that square rectangle-ish thing. So once my sophomore year hit, I was kind of pushed with this, not pushed, I was also excited for it, I'll be honest.
Well, because you were doing better, and because you're doing better and you were older, you were expected to do more.
Right. And so I was starting my sophomore year, and there was this huge expectation that, oh, you got big shoes to fill, like you better fucking work. And so I was doing 1,000 shots every day, getting up at 4 a.m. I think I'm skinnier for a 5. Usually you see like a 5, for some people who don't know, like that's a Shaq. That's a true 5. Now there's different body types. I'm not built like Shaq.
No
offense to Shaq. I think Shaq's lovely. I think his body type is beautiful, but I'm not built that way. All body types are beautiful. And so I also put this pressure on myself, like I need to gain weight. I need to gain muscle. I'm going to get annihilated down there. Because there are girls that were 30, 40, 50 pounds heavier than I was that were just gonna so I also put this pressure on myself, and it was fueled by anxiety. What if I was now going to be a star 5, or the starting 5? What if I go in and fuck it up? What if I do this? And that spinning, it's what I kind of tell you, and you know this. It's also known by like my psychiatrist, he calls it snowballing. But it's based like, well, what if I drop the ball? And what if I drop the ball and that's the play that wins, like that, and we end up losing the game because of that play? What if we lose like that? We lose that game, and that's the championship game. What if we lose the championship game and I'm now the person that made us lost? Like it's snowballing, but also I'd call it spinning. Mm-hmm. And so that happened my entire sophomore year. I remember just like barely hanging on. And then my junior year, it got to the point where I was having a hard time having a conversation with people, because I was so in my head about everything, like absolutely everything. Like it was hard to have a grasp on like being present. It was hard to maintain. I kept my grades up. I was killing myself in the gym. I was killing myself here, so I was tired. And so it was just like, shit, this is really bad. Like, this is really bad. And it wasn't until it got to that point where I was like, this can't be normal. Like this can't be normal. And so there was a therapist on, I think, campus. I think most schools have like a therapy or some sort of help.
Mental health department. Yeah.
So I checked myself into there, and I was like, kind of just dumped all of this onto her. And I wasn't really expecting her response. I was expecting like, oh yeah, chick, there's something going on with you. This is rat. Like, this is crazy. You got to go to a mental place. And she was like, this is okay. You're like, there are tools we can do to help you. This is not uncommon. And that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about this today, is because if I would have had some sort of insight for those 2.5, 3 years that anxiety is not abnormal, maybe I would have gotten help sooner. And those 3 years were fucking hell. And so that was kind of my introduction to the medication. It started off with 50 milligrams. And I'm just talking dosage just because that's usually how you can kind of see throughout this narrative, how it kind of will ramp up and where we're at now and why I'm off of it. But it started at 50 grams. And then my senior year, I think I got up to 150, because my psychologist or psychiatrist and I had a very open conversation about, I knew I didn't want to be on the medication for forever, but I didn't have the time or the energy to sharpen my mental tools to make the anxiety stop. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of I don't want to say a Band-Aid, because I think for each person it's different. Some people it's a Band-Aid. Some people it's like a bit more of a permanent or a stronger hold, or maybe more of a useful long-term tool. I think each person is different. But for me, going into it, it was supposed to be kind of a Band-Aid. Let me just survive. Let me just get through this to the end of my senior year, and then we can talk about like weaning off and all of that.
Okay. Yeah. And so that was college, and obviously it was very difficult. Like, if you look at the external factors that you were put under, I think that, you know, being a college athlete, Division I college athlete, in and of itself is not easy. And then take the fact that you're one of the best on the team, and so you're wanting to make sure that you're training hard and that sort of thing. Um, but what about college, and what happened after college, and how did the anxiety transition, and were you still taking the medication, or what happened?
So after college, I I had this huge sense of relief because my last season, and I hope I'm not, a better word is dissing anyone, any of my past teammates. That's not what this is about. This is internally, and I didn't communicate this with my teammates. I did tell a few of my closer friends on the team like how much I was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I the selection I chose in college wasn't the best selection for my mental health, because in high school, my girls that I played with were my sisters. Like we were inseparable. And in college, it wasn't like that. It wasn't, you didn't, at least I didn't always feel that I would look to the person to my left and my right and be like, yeah, you got me. It wasn't that. We were close, but that wasn't the reason I played in high school was because of my friends, and I wanted to be around my friends. And my friends were no longer the ones that I grew up with, were no longer with me. I had these new friends. And so that kind of that pull to play was no longer there. And so I was just survival. Like, okay, I've committed to this. I'm not fucking quitting, but I'm going to do all that I can to make the most out of this experience, be the best player that I can be. And I'm going to count down the days so that I know how long I need to survive for. So my senior year, I would count on my hands how many practices I had left, how many games I had left, and that just kind of became a daily thing, which is, I feel like not everyone's situation is like that. I feel like people can go to play college ball or any sport and they absolutely fucking love it. Like it's the end all be all. And I think each person is different. But for me, it was like, okay, I just got to get through. I got to survive. So once I graduated, I moved to San Diego. I had family there. I was able to kind of, repatch my mental psyche. I was still on the 150 milligrams. And this was my first try. I remember when I got out of college, like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to wean off of it. I'm going to be okay. But I hadn't taken the time to sharpen the mental tools that I have now. I didn't, it's a Band-Aid, but you still got to check in like, okay, is this like this, Band-Aids are for a purpose, right? Like, hey, are we still bleeding? Are we still, to get like analogy type thing? And I didn't check before I ripped that shit off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I weaned off, and I'm talking really fast now. It's because we'll get to that in a second. But I remember being like, oh, I need to go get my master's. Oh, I need to do this. Like, it was just like I was completely unhinged to the point where I blocked myself off from the world. I had my family in San Diego who I would see, but I stopped talking to my friends. I stopped because I couldn't keep up with the spins. It was too much because I was wondering about, oh, maybe did I hurt this person's feeling? Just being social. The social, going out for drinks, I hope I didn't do this because of this person's feeling. I hope I didn't do this. Like my job, like it just became too much. And so went back into survival mode. And that lasted, I think, like 3 weeks. I didn't wean off of it properly because I didn't have guidance from my psychiatrist, because once college ends, you don't take them with you. They're not like for lifers.
No.
Well, that would have been lovely, but no. And so I just was like, okay, I'm good. And so I went from 150 to being done, which you're not supposed to do. It's really bad for your body to kind of do that.
You're quitting cold turkey.
Quitting cold turkey. And when your body is used to, and again, I'm not going to preach here and know that I know everything about how sertraline works, but I do know enough to be that when you wean off of it, you wean off of it for a reason. Your body has to get used to the absence of the medication. And so when you go from 150 to 0 in a matter of a day, your body, my body at least, I can't speak for everyone, like it flipped out. Like I had rashes all over my face. Like I had it on my eyelids. I had it all around my mouth, my neck, just from going cold turkey. And so I quickly found a psychiatrist, and she was like, let's get you on the 150. And at this point, I was back on my 150, but I was so bummed about the weaning off experience. I could not shake it. And I kind of saw her, and she's like, let's put you on 200. And maybe I didn't need to be on 200, but from her perspective, like what I was telling her about, like, people like, oh, like the deep, dark hole, like depression, anxiety, what is life? Like that's where I was for those
The
2 weeks.
existential crisis.
It was bad. It was really bad. And I think I probably freaked her out a little bit, and she was like, not only are we going to put you back on the medication, we're going to put it back to the highest dose. Like I don't want you ever flirting with that line of mental health, like will you not type thing. So we're going to put you on the medication, we're going to put you on the highest dose. And so now, part of the story, I'm at maybe a year out of college, and I'm tried weaning off, wasn't successful, learned from that experience, back on the medication, and now I'm at 200.
Yeah. And so obviously at some point your journey started in terms of lifestyle changes, what you're doing on a daily basis that's like a healthy for the body, healthy for the mind. What sorts of things, whether it was right away or whether it was somewhere down the line, were you doing to be like, okay, well, I understand that anxiety is something that I don't like, and I understand I'm taking this medication, but the medication, as you explained, is not, it's not a final solution. It's not the biggest solution. So what did you want to start to add in there to what you were doing to reduce the anxiety that you were probably still experiencing when you were taking the medication to some extent?
Yeah. So at that point, I kind of had I don't even know what to call it. It was just kind of like, let's fucking go. Like if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to, and I had gone through kind of some personal struggles with my family and all of that. Like at one point I wasn't talking to my close family just because things had happened from the past when I was younger. So I kind of had this armor on that was like, no one's coming. I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to be the best version of myself for me. I learned from this, college. I went through hell. I survived. What else can I fucking do? And so I took that. I'm back on sertraline, which I was bummed to be back on it, but I was thankful that I was. And I was like, hey, this is going to be a tool for me. This is going to be a helping hand. And my anxiety, or not my anxiety, my relationship with my medication changed. It was like, okay, until I've got my tools, and I talk about these schools about like meditation and journaling and gratitude journals. And,
Do you use a gratitude journal? I don't know.
Yes, baby. I use a gratitude journal every day.
Good job.
Thank you, my love. And so from that pivotal point, I was like, these are the things that I want to do. This is the person I want to become. No one's fucking coming. It's just me. And I started reading self-help books. One of my favorites is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. I started like researching more about law of attraction. I started learning that life is to be lived, not feared, but not to be always hesitant towards. Be mindful, but no one's going to give you anything. You need to do the work, and you need to be able to take it. And so I was reading all these self-help books. I was learning about holistic kind of remedies. I went and made contact with a naturopath. And I slowly but surely started to kind of change my lifestyle. I moved to New York. That was I've always wanted to do that. That was one of my biggest things when I was a little girl when I went there. I think with my grandma, like in 2004, 2005, 2006. And I remember just being like blown away with the energy and the anything is possible. Like when you're in New York, you just thrive. And I remember from being little thinking like, I'm going to be back. And so through these self-help books, through all of this kind of discovery, I'm like, New York is it. I need to go to New York and I need to figure out, I need to just sit with myself. I need to get myself really uncomfortable. I need to learn. I need to push my boundaries from a emotional standpoint, from being okay with being like, it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay. You are worthy of moving to New York. You are capable of moving to New York. And so I eventually sold all my shit, furniture, car, all of it, moved to New York. That was a huge confidence boost for me because it was kind of like, I can do it. And I did it. And that was like, holy shit, I did it. And I think I knew one person. So I reached out to that one person. So from a self-worth kind of self-confidence perspective, New York was huge. Because that kind of proved to me I am worthy of doing things that I make me feel uncomfortable. I am capable of doing way more than I think that I'm possible of of doing. I'm way more capable than I give myself credit for.
I think you have a sweatshirt somewhere that says something like that too.
Yes, I do. So that was huge from that kind of, it's not mental health, it's not emotional, maybe spiritual, kind of just like leaning into, I can do whatever I put my mind to. I also changed my diet. I started eating paleo, and then I graduated to being a vegetarian. Felt really good. I felt more energy. I felt lighter, like just quicker on my feet when I mean lighter. And that was a huge contrast because in college it was like, you're trying to gain weight, you're trying to gain muscle, you better fucking eat. Like carbs, like anything we can get you to eat, we want you to eat. And so that contrast, I started to feel better. I haven't touched a basketball. I think maybe twice. I've played with you once, but I was trying to find other outlets. So I did boxing, like title boxing, where you can go and just beat the shit out of a bag, which was awesome. So just through like changing my diet, changing of scenery, putting myself as the number one priority of like, if I want to live the life that I want to live and the life that I'm capable of living, I got to be dialed. And so I'm going to put myself as number one priority to make sure that I am dialed.
You had the big change to New York. And then how long did you stay there for?
I was there for a year. That was good for me. I'm a California girl. I like my sun. And so I was just kind of like, while this was magical and beautiful and I've learned so much and I've, understood the quality of eating good food, of taking care of myself, of exercising, of knowing who I was in and out. Because when you move to a new place and you don't really know anyone, you kind of have to be, it's like you sit in a room with yourself. You start to really know yourself, understand yourself. To get kind of corny, you realize the absence of love for yourself or the love that you do have for yourself. For me, it was kind of like, oh shit, I got a lot to do in that area. And so I moved back after a year to California. I moved home to Cayucas for like 3 weeks and then was like, okay, what can I do that's a middle ground between lovely, amazing weather and city? And then I found a place on apartment.com and moved to LA.
And so when you think about being at like an all-time high of anxiety during basketball in college and still being on the medication, but you're no longer in college and you're no longer like restricted, right? So during college, you didn't really have an option. If you wanted to stay on the basketball team, you had to go to practice and you had to go through those sometimes difficult experiences. If you wanted to graduate, kind of had no option to do well in your classes, so you're kind of limited by the circumstances. But now you are outside of college, you have more freedom in terms of how you want to spend your time. And you also know about yourself that this anxiety is something that you don't enjoy. So what sorts of things now over the last couple of years do you do on a daily basis to help reduce your anxiety?
Yeah, good question. And you mentioned a crucial part, I think, too, is and I also want to say this because I don't want this is not a poor me. I had a Division 1 scholarship and it was mentally tough. I am very thankful for that opportunity. It has shaped me the person that I am today. It has pushed me to a level I didn't know that I had. So yeah, but when I graduated, you hit that right on the nail, the head on the nail. They're right.
You hit the nail on the head.
Thank you, baby. It was a sense of freedom. It was a sense of like, okay, I've got no one breathing down my neck about the food I'm supposed to eat. It was, I don't have to wake up at 3:30 in the morning to get 1,000 shots up every day. I get to just do what I want to do, study things that I want to study, like the importance of worth and self-worth, self-love. Mm-hmm. I got really, being in New York, I got really, and it's like, this is just kind of just what happens. You look up all these skyscrapers and I would just walk. I would just go, and I lived on 65th Street. So like kind of the Upper East Side. I worked my ass off to save up for the first down payment, the deposit, and first month's rent of all of that. Not down payment, but the first month's rent and deposit. So that I was able just to sign the lease when I got there. And I would just go and walk. I'd go look, I'd go explore, I'd take notice of things. There was a lot of quiet time. And I learned while being in New York that I thrive with quiet time. Quiet time allows me, it kind of sounds silly when I say it out loud, but it's silent. It's if people that run in the morning and it's quiet, or people that go for morning walks or meditation, that silence is kind of like a reset button. And so New York's super loud, but thank God I lived by Central Park, and I would go walk around Central Park and I would just sit in the silence. So that's one thing I take with me now, mm-hmm. that has been really helpful, is acknowledging that when I have anxiety and when I have starting to spin things, I recognize, okay, we need to have a moment of silence. We need to have some quiet so that I can reverse spin. I can reverse the spins. Yeah. Talk myself out of what I just talked myself into.
Yeah.
So that was a huge thing. Like I mentioned, the healthy diet, the endorphins from the exercise, and like kind of having a place as an outlet. Have a shitty day, go for a run. Or have a shitty day. This is before COVID, so I'd go box. It was a place where I could turn my brain off and just focus. And why I really liked boxing was because you would get numbers. You'd hear like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's kind of a sequence. And you'd hear mm-hmm. like 1, 3, 6, 5. And you have to really focus on the sequence of how you hit your punches. Mm-hmm. And because I was so much focusing on that, I could turn my brain off. It was like this, I could just be quiet. I could be quiet. And that was really helpful, kind of keep the anxiety dialed mm-hmm. at bay.
Yeah.
So that was huge. Being mindful what I was putting in my body. Alcohol. I really noticed when I'd go and I think I went out a few times in New York, and it's New York. You're going to drink, you're going to meet friends. And I remember the next day just being ridden. Like my anxiety was way higher than normal. My stress levels were way higher than normal. I'm like, okay, that was fun last night. But not only does like the hangover suck ass, so does the anxiety increase. Mm-hmm. So I learned that, and I'm still to this day, I'm a bit not hesitant with alcohol. It just has to be a really good reason for me to drink, like our wedding. That's a good reason. See, exercise, food, alcohol, and you're not really supposed to drink on sertraline anyway, so that you can't take your medication when you do drink. So it's kind of like a double whammy.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I've noticed is you're very conscious with the way that you spend your time. Mm. So even if something might seem like a moderately high priority, if you are not like, hey, I wouldn't be putting my best self forward if I went and did this thing.
Yeah.
It seems like you're dropping the phone. Okay. It seems like you're very conscious of I'm actually going to go for a walk this morning instead of doing whatever. Because if I were to do whatever, I might be in a crappy mood there, or I might be thinking about the fact that I should be doing something else. So that's one thing that I notice, is that it seems like sometimes when maybe you're feeling that anxiety rise, or you feel like it might be rising, you're very conscious of, I'm going to go for a walk. I want to meditate. I need 5 minutes alone. So that's another thing that I noticed that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your reasoning why you eventually decided that you wanted to start weaning off sertraline and decreasing your medication?
Yeah, so the first one being, and I touched upon it a bit earlier, was that this was not a forever thing. I wanted to be able to have something to help me while I sharpen my tools. And I keep saying sharpen my tools, and I know I talked about this a bit earlier. The tools are what I just rattled off to you. The communication, hey, I'm stressed. I've got some anxiety. I need some alone time. I need to go for a walk. That communication is imperative, because I didn't have the awareness or the confidence to speak about anxiety into existence because I thought it was so abnormal. So throughout these 8 years, I've, you thank God, like you hear people like Simone, you hear like anxiety and mental health, Michael Phelps, like all of these people suffer from it. And it's not till like these last couple of years where it's gotten the attention that I think it, in athletes and people, that I think it deserves. So I had my tools: communication, journaling, meditation, healthy diet and exercise, to be like, okay, I'm in a completely different space. I love where I live. I'm by the beach. I'm married to a very amazing person such as yourself. I know my limits. I'm still working on that last part a little bit as I'm weaning off of this. I officially, my last day taking any sort of dosage was Tuesday. This is Friday, August 2nd. So I have my tools sharpened. I have another dream of being a mom one day. And through many conversations with my OBGYN and research, you are not advised. And I don't really think I don't want to say it's like a major no-no. I don't know enough about it. But for me, for my OBGYN to say, you don't want to be taking this when you're trying to get pregnant, was enough for me to be like, okay, I got you. I don't know the specifics of how bad or the risks or all of that are, but I have a very lovely goal, dream of being a mom one day. And you don't want to be taking sertraline while being pregnant or trying to be pregnant. It has negative effects to the baby. So that was another thing.
So your internal circumstances were different mentally, and your external circumstances were different. And it was an overall goal for yours.
Yep. That sounds about it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, has it been super easy and fun and full of rainbows and butterflies?
Full transparency, it's been a journey. I have been describing it to people because I think I have my notes, but it's going to make some sort of ruckus. So I'll just sort of go off my brain. After we got married, which was in May, and we came back from our honeymoon, I kind of spoke to you about like, I want to be off of sertraline. Like I want to, like, I'm in a completely different place I was when I was on it. I've got my tools. I've got, we're married. Like I'm ready. And while I was ready, I don't think I fully was aware, because it's been 8 fucking years since I've had the full effect of my anxiety without any sort of medication. So I think I started weaning off of it to 25, 50, 100, 150, 200. I started weaning off of it 10 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So how you're supposed to wean off, from my psychiatrist, my personal person, it could be different for different people. I don't know. He recommended doing 200, where I started, to 150. So 200, wait
2 weeks.
2 weeks, go to 150. Or I was already at 200, so I didn't really need to wait 2 weeks. I would just go to 150, wait 2 weeks, go to 100, wait 2 weeks, go to 50, wait 2 weeks, go to 25, go 2 weeks. So it's kind of a long process. When it's done how it's supposed to be done, it can be quite, it's not just a snap of your fingers, oh, I'm done. Like, that's not how you're supposed to do it from what I've learned firsthand and the guidance from my psychiatrist. So it's been a journey. Each 2 weeks has what it feels like. And so this is why you want to have your tools sharpened, people around you that you love, and that open communication. I always will come back to that communication. Is when I dropped to 150, I felt like my anxiety was kind of like, like water in a dam, right? The dam keeps the water in place. When you drop 50 milligrams or whatever, it's kind of like, oh, the water comes out, but it's a bit more forceful. There's some major fucking cracks, and it's like pretty forceful. And then, 2 weeks later, there's more holes in the dam. And then, each 2 weeks has gone by, there's more holes in the dam, more holes in the dam. So where I am now, where I'm no longer on it we're at 3 days, it's basically full force anxiety. I wouldn't say I'm back to where I was before. Like I said, I've got my tools, I've got my people, I've got my communication, but there's been some ebbs and some flows. Your priority changes. Like I'm learning a lot that I like to be busy. I don't like to sit and twiddle my thumbs. So I have a full-time job. I have this amazing podcast. I have a 100K training for Kodiak. That's in October. I'm working on. I pride myself on the relationship with the humans that I've been able to make connections with. So you, local friends, my family, they're always my priority. I'm pretty protective of my circle. So when you're in my circle, like, I'll walk through fire for you. So I very much prioritize the people that are in my circle. If you're in there for life. You don't really have a choice. So balancing all of that has been a lot of learning lessons. A lot of, okay, I think I got this, to like last night, I totally came home and just burst into tears. Like I was tapped. I think those are the words I use. I'm tapped out.
There might have been a couple other expletives.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is a expletive friendly podcast. So yes, if there's a curse word out there, I probably said it. But it's also taught me a lot about prioritizing. So like right now, I'm focused on my training, my podcast, you, my people, and my job. At this moment in time, my mental health has to be in those top priorities, where it has not been before, because I've had my medication kind of help me out. So like Thursday last night, I was supposed to go to an event. I thought big picture. I'm like, what is this event going to do to me? Am I going to see anybody that I know? Is it just more of a networking thing where I can bump into someone and try to have a person on the podcast? And mentally, I was, like I said, tapped. I'm training. I'm working. My muggle job is full-time job, like full thing. So I kind of had a come to Jesus moment where it's like, this event no longer serves me. I need to not go. My priorities have changed. And so that awareness, that dialogue, that inner dialogue of like, well, you committed to something. It's like, yes, I did. I know no one. The reason I'm going is I could potentially bump into someone to have on the podcast. Is not a good enough reason for my mental health to not take the front seat. And that's where it needs to be, always.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I think that the other side of the coin is that regardless of what the for last night, regardless of what the plans were, I think that a lot of people, there's a sense of obligation with things. And so, would it be better for you to show up to something and not be present and maybe be snappy and maybe not have a good time personally, and maybe not, be the type of person, but you like to be around people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of it. But anything else before we jump into the favorite last part of the episode?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking through my notes to make sure, because I'm sure I've probably, let's see. Last thoughts before we jump. I mean, I guess my biggest thing is just like this, and I said this at the beginning, this anxiety podcast episode, it is not to scare people. It is not to discourage them if they're on medication want to come off. It isn't a sob story. It is something, while I am a host of a podcast of people that do epic shit today, and I get to share that space with them, and they share their mental health and vulnerability, I felt it was morally right. And as a human, as a podcast host, as someone who has gone through this, that it is important for me to share, because it could be helping someone. And if this doesn't help anyone, fine. But if it does help someone, and I hope that it does, then I've done my job.
Well, I very much appreciate you sharing it with me. There were a couple of things that you mentioned that I'd have forgotten or that you hadn't talked about before. So I appreciate you sharing it and just telling your experience with something that's hard, with being open about a difficult experience and where you are right now and what maybe challenges lie ahead and what you're proud of so far. So
yeah,
thanks for sharing.
Of course. 8 years I was on this. It's a big deal.
It's awesome.
I'm feeling it. My brain is like fried, but it's the big picture in all of this is like, I get to potentially help people. I want to be a mom one day. And I've worked my ass off to sharpen the tools that I have in my back pocket to make them as much relevant as they possibly can. And so for me, it's going to be hard. I think life's not supposed to be easy, especially the good stuff's not supposed to be easy always. And so I'm excited in like long term. I'm excited to be me again. I'm excited I'm more fiery. Have more energy. I talk way faster just because that's just my brain goes a million miles an hour, but my mouth's having a hard time keeping up. But I'm excited for what the future holds because of this. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
You're usually the reader of rapid fire questions, but now you're the recipient.
That's right.
Your first question for the day is, what is your favorite sweet treat?
I actually didn't think about these before we're here today.
We should have had it where I wrote down what your answer was going to be and to see if I get it right. I have it in my head right now for what your favorite sweet treat is.
What do you think my sweet treat is?
I can't tell you.
You gotta tell me, baby.
No, you go first.
Okay.
And then I'll say.
Well, I've got two, depending on the type.
Okay.
This is a post-dinner sweet treat. Dates and peanut butter. All the way. Mm-hmm. Not the already pitted dates, because half the time like it loses the meat of the date. Mm-hmm. You want the pitted ones, and then you scoop them out. Put a little peanut butter on there. Oh. If it's a sweet treat where like I just got back from a run, watermelon. Cold watermelon.
Mm. I was going to say dates with peanut butter with a little chocolate, a chocolate chip on top. That was going to be my thought. We don't have chocolate chips very often, but if we do, you put those on there.
I do.
Feel like that adds a little bit of a kick to the treat.
Really, really takes it to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second question, what are you most proud of?
I was actually talking to you about this on one of our runs. We recently went to Big Bear this past weekend so I could test out some of the terrain and hills. I am the most proud of, I think if I were to look to myself, like look back, and I had a very interesting childhood where I kind of like figured things out on my own. I didn't ever ask for help. I just kind of grinded my teeth and gritted hard and worked my ass off. I am very proud of the human that I am today, because I think the human that I am today would have made my 15, 14, 3-year-old self very proud. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, what's your favorite place you ever traveled?
Yeah, see, I really should have thought of these prior. I mean, we went to our honeymoon in Bali. I think the destination is one piece, but I think it's also the people that you travel with that either can take it home. I think internationally, Bali was amazing. The spiritual aspect was top tier. We got to meet with the healer. We got to hike up this huge volcano at sunrise. We got to take a boat into like beautiful waters.
Get splashed in the face for 45 minutes.
It was part of the ambiance. My second favorite place will always be Hawaii. Hawaii holds a special place in my heart, mainly in Oahu. We got married in Kauai. It is the only place I think in the entire world where I feel like I could take a full breath. It's where I feel the most at home. I feel the most connected. I feel like I'm the best and authentic version of who I am as a human in Hawaii. That's my number 2.
That's awesome.
Thanks, baby.
And the last rapid fire question is, what are 3 things that you're grateful for?
And for those that probably, maybe this is your first episode or maybe your 58th episode listening, I always end with episodes with 3 things that you're grateful for, because that is also something I mentioned earlier that really keeps my head aligned, head on straight, keeps me, what am I trying to say, babe? It keeps me dialed into what matters. It's always something I can come back to. I have a gratitude journal that I use every morning. I have them on my website if you'd like to look at them. But 3 things that I'm grateful for have always kind of redirected my mental energy to the present by taking a moment and actually reflecting on what I'm thankful to already have. So, back to your question. 3 things I'm grateful for. I am beyond grateful for you.
Oh, thanks, babe.
You're a very amazing person. I am very lucky that I get to be your wife. Oh. And I'm not just saying that because he is like the most supportive. We had to kind of jimmy rig our 1 bedroom to fit this video, and he was all moving tables and like, you're awesome, my love.
Thank you.
Second thing, I'm very, very thankful that regardless of how hard shit hits the fan, I'm always willing to try again. I don't think that everybody has that. I don't know. I'm not I'm afraid sometimes, but I'm never afraid to the point where I'm going to quit. And I think I'm very thankful that I'm okay being afraid. I'm okay with having discomfort. I'm okay being uncomfortable. Where I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily lean into that. And I'm okay with it. It's hard. Sometimes it sucks, but I'm okay with it because I know there's a bigger, better potential learning lesson in the outcome. So I'm thankful for that. And then the third thing I'm thankful for is this podcast is like a side hustle. It's my outlet. And I've got some really cool people in this community. This podcast came to be by me feeling very stuck at a corporate job and wanting to remind myself and others around me that you don't have to stay in the parameters of what society tells you to, whether that's from an entrepreneur mindset, physical mindset of going out for these long races or starting to run for the first time, or pushing you're pushing your body to physical feats, to financials, like buying a home. There really is no topic that's off the table. And so I'm very thankful of what this podcast has become and what it is becoming. I think I've got an amazing opportunity to meet some really incredible people, and I don't take that for granted.
Those are 3 very good things to be grateful for.
Thank you. What are 3 things that you're grateful for, my love?
Well, number 1, I'm very grateful for you.
Thank you.
You're an amazing wife. I'm very, very happy with you. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'm thankful for being able to move and be active. That's like a common theme with your guests, is being happy, moving, and being active. And I'm very happy for that. And lastly, I'm very grateful for all the people in my life that are amazing. So I'm very lucky to be surrounded by people that I love, people that love me back. So yeah.
All right, well, that wraps it up. Thank
Thanks,
you, guys.
everybody.